Hello, my fellow YouTube fans. I'm Gene Delasala with Audioholics, and we are back with Marshall Guthrie from CES, and today we're going to be discussing powered speakers. How's it going, my friend?
It's going great. We continue to break down the trends that we were seeing at CES, and this was probably my biggest trend. If somebody asked me, hey, what was the audio side of the show about? This was it. It was powered speakers. And maybe just a brief little history lesson here. So I think a lot of people like around my age might have grown up with powered speakers, and usually they were computer speakers, small, crappy plastic speakers. A lot of times they came actually packaged with the computer. Occasionally they'd have a subwoofer, quote unquote subwoofer with them. That was maybe 6-inch driver, again a plastic enclosure, and they were just junk. That was the one type of powered speaker out there, and the only other type of powered speaker that was out at the time was studio monitors. People that had custom designed speakers with specific drivers and amplification made it up to give you the best sound possible in a near field listening environment, and those were typically found in a recording studio. We saw a lot of the bottom end of that market start to drop. You had Behringer was doing maybe a little bit of a knockoff system, but their Truth series really picked up a lot of momentum. JBL is doing fantastic things both then and now with the 3 series. For a couple $100 you can get a fantastic powered speaker. But they're designed for the studio. They don't have a lot in terms of inputs and outputs. You either have to have a 1/4-inch jack or an XLR to get your inputs. There's no subwoofer outputs. There's nothing to take a digital signal. So these are really analog in its most basic format. And that's what a lot of people were doing for a long time for their high value sound in a near field environment. And then some other companies came along. And the first one I remember was back in the mid 2000s. I was at an audio show in New York. And this was the type of show where there were people showing off 5-6-figure audio systems. And the most interesting speaker that I saw that day cost $200. And it was the Audio Engine A2. It was this tiny little speaker, and no, it didn't sound like those huge systems, but it was amazing how low cost it was and how much sound they got out of these tiny powered speakers that would go just perfect alongside somebody's computer monitor. I think they kind of, with a lot of creative colors and creative design besides, really kicked off the momentum that's carried forward to things like the KEF LS50 wireless. And what we saw at this show was some manufacturers who have really focused on traditional speakers, focused on passive speakers that you had to match up with an AV receiver or an amplifier. We saw those folks coming out and saying, nope, we're jumping right into the wireless speaker market, the self-powered speaker market, along with these other folks.
And what they're trying to do now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're trying to make a traditional box speaker, a high-performance speaker, but with the functionality of, say, a Sonos. Something that you can network together or you could stream to. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's still a lot of folks that are doing, like $300-400 pair speakers that sound great. But what's happening is we're seeing a lot of the higher end speaker manufacturers now putting out pairs of speakers that are $1,000 or $2,000, integrating some of these wireless components in them. Almost everything that we looked at had some sort of wireless beyond even Bluetooth, DTS Play-Fi, Chromecast, their own particular flavor of it. And giving you all the options that you might get with a Sonos system, except from a pedigree of somebody who's making $10,000 speakers.
Right, so now we're getting the wireless functionality, ease of setup that everybody likes, but we're going to the audiophile level of performance.
Yeah, and that was a common thread that I saw going through. What I think we should do, though, is start by talking about some of the more modestly priced systems that were out there, and we'll jump into a little bit more of the high end. A company that we know and love, SVS, probably best known for making subwoofers back in the heyday, but they quickly expanded into some really well-reviewed home theater speakers. The Ultra series I've had in the house for review, and did a really great job there. They introduced a lower cost line called the Prime line, still a good quality product. And now what they've done is they've introduced a wireless self-powered version of that, and they're calling it the Prime Wireless. You're going to see some images coming up. These are still prototypes. The cosmetics are going to change, get a little bit more refined. They'll look a little bit less like I think the President Gary Jacobian said they look a little bit like the old car radio, like the little dial that you'd switch back and forth and the physical needle would actually scan the stations. They have a little bit of that look to them right now.
Little retro look to it. So tell me how this works, because I'm looking at some of the notes here and you're saying they're a combination of active, passive, and you could use as a single speaker. You could do them as dual, wireless, or wired. Tell us all about that.
So a common design with these self-powered speakers is to take a left and right speaker and stuff all the amplification into just one of the speakers. So let's say you've got the left speaker, you cram all the amplification, all the wireless functionality, all the inputs and outputs into just the left speaker. And then the right speaker is still just a passive speaker. You connect it with a standard piece of 2-conductor copper, and it powers itself off the amplification built in the one. So what SVS has done is they've created a system that kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility. For starters, they have a 200-watt amplification built into their active speaker. That's 50 watts times 4 channels, and that's where it might get a little confusing, but remember, you need one channel for the woofer and one channel for the tweeter. So they're driving 50 watts just to the woofer and 50 watts just to the tweeter of the active speaker. That uses 2 of the channels. The other 2 left out of the 4 can then be used to power that passive speaker, but you still get the same performance as you would with an integrated system because they know exactly the type of drivers, they know exactly where the crossover is going to be. They can create it as an integrated system. So that's the least expensive way.
They do this with active crossovers, correct?
Yes, yeah. So that's the least expensive way to get a powered set of the Prime Wireless speakers. However, if you have a setup where you can't run a physical piece of copper in between them, or maybe you only want to run a mono or a summed stereo signal out of a single speaker enclosure, you can buy the active speakers separately and use just that, or pair up multiple active speakers to create kind of like a Sonos whole home environment. You can take one active speaker, plop it in the bedroom, one in the living room, one in the kitchen, and then operate those using the DTS Play-Fi standard to do that sort of whole home approach to audio.
Okay, so when you do this approach and you put them all around the house, I assume it would just basically be a mono at that point, right? You wouldn't be doing left and right from across the room. It would just be mono sum to each speaker.
Yeah, I think that would be the best design. And in terms of whether you can or not, I'd have to dig deep into my notes. There aren't any specs up online yet, so that would be a follow-up question for SVS. But yes,
okay.
In theory, you wouldn't want to send just your left signal to your living room, your right signal to the bedroom.
Especially if you're listening to an old Beatles recording.
Right, unless you cut a hole in the wall in between and stick your head in it, I guess.
Well, that sounds cool. I'm glad to see SVS doing that. I guess what's the next level of product that you saw in this kind of category?
So when people ask me, how serious were powered speakers at CES, everybody knows it costs money for these exhibitors to go to CES, and not just for the hotel and the flight, but they have to actually pay for the room to put their stuff in, pay to get included in the brochure, and it adds up to a lot. GoldenEar, which is a very revered name in modern home theater and loudspeaker design, they were there, and the only thing they were showing in this big expensive room was a prototype of a wireless self-powered speaker that they're going to have coming out. And I believe it's the DigitalAktiv 3 is what they're going to be calling it, but I've just been calling it the GoldenEar self-powered prototype. Instead of the DTS Play-Fi standard, they're using the Chromecast standard. I'm a big fan of the Google Cast Chromecast. It's really easy to set up multiple groups to take a single speaker and include it in a whole home group or just a front of the house group or play it by itself. You can set it up into a bunch of different groups and have that same speaker be functional in all those. Well, they had nothing else in this room, not a single other speaker, not a single wire, not a single component, just this prototype, which shows how serious they are about getting this off the ground.
It also uses the WISA protocol, which is a really high-end wireless standard, very robust interface. We've heard many products using WISA in the past. They've always been very solid, both in reliability and performance.
Yep, and WISA is what you're going to do to connect these in pairs, both a left and right pair. And in terms of the high-quality components as well, they use the tweeter from their reference series, their highest-end tower speaker, using the same tweeter in this. So we're guaranteed, I think, to have their best technology sort of trickling down into this pretty modestly priced system. The hope is that these are going to come in at about $2,000 a pair. Again, that's priced to be announced. It's not finalized yet, but that puts them very competitive with some of their other high-end manufacturers like KEF.
And technically, guys, it has 2 passive radiators on each side of the cabinet, so it should have good bass output for most applications. But if it's not enough, I believe it has an unbalanced subwoofer output, so you can actually connect powered subwoofers to these speakers.
Definitely has a sub out. I'd have to pull up the photo. The viewers will be seeing it right now, taking a look at the back of this thing. 56-bit DSP, they're very high on that, and also it's using Class AB amplification. A lot of people are going to Class D because it's lightweight and it's power efficient, but there's still some folks who believe the sound of AB is vastly superior. So GoldenEar's not taking any chances. They're going with AB amplification in this, which can be less common.
Sure. It looks like a cool product. I believe they're going to start having samples in summertime, so we're going to be getting in a pair for review, and I think they ship somewhere in the fall, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're targeting the fourth quarter. Still a little bit of development to be done with this, but maybe by CES next year we'll have a product ready to ship.
Okay. So what about our friends at Elac? They're always doing something new at all these trade shows.
Yeah, continuing the high-end side of things, Elac is using their Argo series to create a new market for themselves with self-powered wireless speakers. They have done some speakers in the past, but this will be the first one that's been designed by Andrew Jones. They're also tagging this with the Air X2 or Air X squared. I forgot to ask, or I was calling it Air X2 and nobody corrected me. But it's their wireless protocol. So the details are still a little skimpy coming out, but it looks to be similar to a DTS Play-Fi or a Chromecast standard, a way of connecting a source wirelessly to the speaker, so you don't have to have a speaker connected to a CD player or an amplifier. And they have their Discovery server, which has this functionality too, so you can kind of beam your music from one to the other. Discovery server uses the Rune software, which is a very nice music library software. So a lot of folks familiar with the Elac Discovery series should be quite happy with integrating these wireless speakers throughout their house using the server they may already own to drive their music through these.
Yeah, so basically Elac is creating its own community with all their different products to support the same Rune service.
Yeah, you can't blame them. They know their audience. They know that if they can get people buying that same brand over and over. Sonos has done really well with this. The Sonos owners get hooked, and they wouldn't dare buy a speaker other than Sonos because they're in the infrastructure.
Yeah, their ecosystem, if you will.
Yeah, the ecosystem. So they're pursuing something similar.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll be looking closer at the Elacs. What other wireless speakers? I'm sure you've seen a ton of them, so let's not go and dwell on every single one, just the ones that stood out to you, I guess. What else did you see?
I'm going to call out one more brand, and it's a brand that we haven't covered much, and it's from the folks at Kanto, K-A-N-T-O. Mm-hmm. And they had their whole line there, and these weren't new speakers. They're U2, 4, and 6, U spelled Y-U, 2, 4, and 6, bigger the number, bigger the driver. The big piece here is that a lot of folks are buying these self-powered speakers because they want simplicity. They don't want a lot of wires running everywhere, which means these are aesthetically conscious people. And what Kanto has done is they've really focused on a variety of colors, a variety of materials like wood, in a variety of sizes. So there's sort of a Goldilocks approach. If it's too big or too small, you've got another option to fit just right into your home. They also, what they were showing new for the show is a product called SYD, S-Y-D. They've done SYDs in the past, but this is the new SYD. And what SYD is a single enclosure Bluetooth speaker. It has 2 channels in the single enclosure. So think of this as your stereo Bluetooth speaker, except really amped up with a nice finish, good design, great sound, and a lot more inputs and outputs, including that subwoofer output. We know that a lot of Bluetooth speakers really sacrifice that low end. This had decent low end on its own, but certainly with a sub output, you connect this up to your favorite sub of choice, and you've got a real monster system in a very small footprint. And the best part about these is the price. It's going to be $299 is what it's going to be shipping at in April. So for $300, you get a step up, much up above those old computer speakers of yore.
Now, do any of these products, like I guess this one, for example, does it have any of the smart home integration like Alexa Skill or Google Assist?
So let's go back. The Prime, the SVS Prime, what's great about those is that you can address those from a phone, and you can use the DTS Play-Fi software. They also have hard buttons on there, which I forgot to mention. Just like a memory station on a car radio, you press it and it goes to your favorite channel. You pull up your app of choice, Spotify, my smooth jazz station, and you hold down that button. It remembers the memory on that device, and then whenever you're in the room, you don't have to pull out your phone anymore, you just press that. And so they did not mention any smart integration specifically, although there's always products to be announced there. But what they did do is they tried to focus on that ease of use so that it's as simple as walking up and pressing one button for your favorite station. GoldenEar, the Chromecast standard, can be addressed with any device that can address Chromecast device. Obviously, the Google Assistant is probably first and foremost there, but we may see other integration coming down the road. Elac was not specific about anything other than the Discovery software being integrated, obviously, or the Discovery system being integrated. Although with all the inputs and outputs available to you, it's a piece of cake to hook up an Amazon Dot or a Google Chromecast audio and have it be addressable by the two prevalent systems that are out there right now, the Amazon and the Google systems.
Yeah, I mean, you could get these systems for like $40 or less usually, right?
Yeah, well, Black Friday, I went hog wild on Black Friday, and I think I mentioned before, I wound up with, I think, 5 different Amazon systems and 7 different Google systems. They were practically giving them away.
And that's a good point, Marshall. A lot of these speakers, even if they don't have that built in, if they have a USB interface to them, you could plug in one of the Amazon Dots or, you know, another system like that, comparable, and start controlling your speaker in a smart way.
Yep, that Chromecast audio is this tiny little puck. It can get powered off a USB port, hooks up via Toslink, so it's really high quality audio, and you pretty much tape it to the back of your speaker. You'd never see it. It becomes automatically a wireless system that you can address through the Google Assistant standard.
Right. So, I mean, it sounds like when you were at the show, you were kind of getting this feeling that you're seeing a trend where powered speakers are taking over the market for this year. And you actually take it one step further, and I guess you're kind of predicting that this could be the death of passive speakers. What do you think about that?
I hope there aren't any audiophile viewers out there, because they're going to light up the comments with this one. But I'm going to say it. I'll take the position. I'm not saying it's probable. I'm saying it's possible that the passive speakers of yore are gone. That the days of hooking up a big AV receiver and connecting them up with wires are going to be gone. In the same way that we used to pop CD players into our systems. When was the last time anyone opened up a CD player? I know maybe if you got some high definition CDs.
In fact, all the cars after 2018 are coming out now without CD players built into them.
Yeah, everyone's playing music off their phones. What we've proven over and over again is that we value convenience above quality. I'm not saying it's right, but what I'm saying is that if we can get 90% of the way there with half of the fuss, we're going to make that compromise.
Yeah.
And so what I think is going to happen is folks that might have found their way into a high quality separate system are instead going to be looking for a high quality self-powered wireless system, where instead of hooking up a bunch of different wires to a bunch of different components, they're hooking up 2 power cables to the wall, pulling out their phone, and making the music happen.
I'll tell you this much. Here's my thoughts on this, because I guess I'm kind of old school. I mean, I like new technology, but I still like what works and what sounds good. I think this is the death to multi-zone in receivers. I think it's a waste of resources for AV manufacturers to be giving you 4 zones of audio in an AV receiver. Why don't you take that crap out, because we don't need it anymore. Give us better power supplies, bigger amplifiers, and let everybody just do a wireless type of speaker, smart speaker all around the house. Everybody's got their own solution. Denon's got Hios, Yamaha's got MusicCast. Everybody has their own ecosystem now to support wireless speakers. I do think passive speakers are still a necessity for people that are really serious about audio, because powered speakers can only go so far. They can only play so loud unless you put some really big amps and have some really big speakers inside of them. Most of the time, powered speakers have limited applications in terms of output. So I still think there's a market for the high end where they still want to have their big, giant 1 kilowatt monoblock amps with their big powered speakers or passive speakers, or even do in-walls, because in-walls are less of an eyesore than a box anywhere in a room.
And obviously I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, but I tend to skew more towards the consumer side. I hang out with a lot of folks who are getting in more on the entry level side of things. They're trying to get things done for a tenth of the price of your common audiophile. I think that one area where the traditional speakers also have an advantage is upgradability. You can upgrade components of your system one at a time as you kind of move on up. Whereas if you get a self-powered speaker, that's it. That's the whole system right there. You can't change out the drivers, you can't change out the amplifier, that's all you get. So you have to be kind of committed to go all in at the quality that you want, as opposed to right now, I can take my home theater and I can upgrade the subwoofer when I got a few bucks, and then I can upgrade the mains, and then I can upgrade my projector, and then I can upgrade my amplifier. There's a lot to it that I can do a component at a time.
Yeah, and let's also not forget, for surround speakers, for side channels, I don't know of any powered speakers that mount on a wall. And even if you did, you'd still have to supply power to them anyways. So you're still not going to be totally wireless, because the wireless speakers that are with the sound bars, they have the little battery pack on them. They only give you so much output and they only play for so many hours until you have to take them off the wall and recharge them anyways. So again, there's still limited applications in what you could do with a powered speaker when it comes to really high performance home theater.
Yep, and I will not disagree with any of that, but I'm going to double down on it. I'm going to create even more enemies, and I will say that the folks that I know, that they just want good sound with minimum fuss. If these self-powered wireless speakers keep improving and we keep getting some of these bigger names with a lot of technological know-how and a lot of experience in the audio systems, if they start making really high quality self-powered speakers, I do believe that there's going to be a segment of our current generation or a generation to come where they find themselves a good set of powered speakers and they're perfectly content, happy as pigs in poop, and they just sit there all day long without ever thinking about what could be different.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think the powered market, at least for distributed audio and multi-zone audio, is the wave of the future. So it's kind of making me want to turn in all my little volume controls I have all around my house and just not use them anymore.
And shouldn't we embrace this? I mean, for how long have we been complaining about people who listen to a crappy little Bluetooth speaker or listening to the built-in speakers in their television? Shouldn't we embrace any product that gives them better audio at the level of difficulty that they're willing to tolerate in their lives? For all the audiophiles that are complaining because not everyone goes out and buys 300-pound front channels and hooks up 130-degree heat creating amplifiers to this, shouldn't those folks at least be happy that new consumers are coming up and meeting them halfway with some quality self-powered speakers?
At the very minimum, it raises the low end bar of performance, which is always a good thing. I mean, it's always a good thing that people start getting exposed to decent audio, because then it makes them want more. So yeah, this could be an entry level for people when they say, wow, this sounds really good having these powered wireless speakers all around my house. Now I want to get serious and have a dedicated theater room. And that's where they just do the traditional speakers with the receivers or multi-channel amplifiers. And that's an isolated system on its own. I just think the days of having a home theater room and then also using it as multi-purpose for multi-zone, those days are gone, because now you have such convenience, like you're saying, on how you can network all these speakers within minutes, playing off your phone, playing off your network drive. I mean, it's just ridiculous, because all my multi-zone stuff now is obsolete in my house, thanks to this.
Yeah, I wired up the new house with places in the ceiling for speakers just because wire's cheap, but I agree. At some point, I have to ask myself, is it more convenient for me to have one AV receiver, which never does everything totally smoothly with managing different zones and selecting inputs, or is it just easier to connect up a Chromecast audio and have my Google Assistant and say, hey G, play Propaganda when I get home and rock out? It's right. There's a lot of options out there, and we should be happy that we're entering this era. Don't lament the bygone era. By all means, keep your high quality tower speakers for that one pristine room in your house. But the days of trying to shoehorn a big passive speaker system into every room of your house are gone. And as you said, the low end of things, the smaller speakers, the quality is getting to the point that it's acceptable, and we should just be happy that our lives are a little bit easier and sound a little bit better.
Yeah, and for the old school guys, that I'm talking even more old school than me, from the 70s and 80s, there's still a bit of a market for that, because you saw at CES, Marshall, JBL reintroduced the L100s with updated drivers.
LS150s, 100s. It'll be here. That's a different video. I didn't study up on
it. It was the L100s, because I remember those speakers
L100,
as a kid.
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
It's a 12-inch three-way speaker.
My numbers mixed up.
We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the vintage coming back as kind of a new thing for, I guess, the millennials that are getting to get into the vintage kind of audio with an update to it.
Yeah, agreed. It's for a different video, but everyone out there right now, the new trend is old school fabric and old school wood. That aesthetic, don't get me wrong, for every shiny gloss red speaker out there, there's somebody that wants an old MDF cabinet finished in a terrible wood vinyl.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave that for a topic of another video, but I think I've kind of slugged this out about the passive versus active speakers this whole video. Why don't we get some feedback from our readers? Comment down below. Let us know what you think. Do you think powered speakers are the wave of the future? Are you going to be turning in your receivers and turning in your honking amplifiers and go the route that Marshall's saying? Or are you more Team Gene, where you're old school and you want to have your separate amps and you want to have your big passive speakers and you want to crank it to volume 11? Let us know what you think. Comment down below, and we will be discussing in our third video, we'll be discussing AV receivers and preamp processors. So keep listening and stay tuned.